Hello there, everybody. This is the Man Alone solo role-playing channel, the only Scientology solo role-playing channel on YouTube. Kidding. But shouts out, any Scientologists watching, curious. You know, you never think of what you guys are doing outside of the Scientology stuff. Do you play solo role-playing games? I don't know. I'd be curious. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe a Dianetics game? That could be interesting. But we're only obliquely talking about Dianetics today because we are talking about another way of knowing thyself, which is using oracles. That's right, the name of the game today is oracles. Now, a brief description, oracles, no, we're not talking about Delphi or the Matrix. We're talking about those tables used in solo role-playing games to abstract or derive information that we can use in order to fill in the gaps, advance our story, figure out what happens next, find out characteristics of somebody, generate dialogue. They're basically the tools that we use to simulate a GM. And why do we use tables to simulate a GM? Now, I know this is fairly obvious, but I think it's worth saying because it will center the conversation that we have. The reason we do this and don't, for example, just read a book that says things your GM says is number one, they have to be adaptable to the situation that we're in. And number two, it has to almost be like a self-brain fakie where you are pulling things from your brain that are alchemized with these outside inputs so that the things that you create are surprising and oblique and not at all what you expected, because if you just kept saying all the things that you felt like saying during play, even though this may not be true, a lot of times you would feel as though you're just sitting there talking to yourself, which bad news to all dedicated solo role players. You are. Anyways, I was reviewing the multiple Forbidden Lands solo tools that are available in the Book of Beasts, as well as the additional rules from Matt K. And I must say, you know, the Matt K one is PDF only. But all of this I printed out, and I have the Book of Beasts, so I'm not sure why I did that. But nevertheless, it's always nice to hear the printer go burr. I'm not going to think about trees, but I was looking, and what I'm really liking about these solo supplement here is that there are lots of tables to use. Not every table is an oracle. Like, for instance, a table that just tells you like different items that are available at a shop is not necessarily an oracle. I guess it could be made into an oracle, but usually an oracle has a randomization to it. It has something, whether that be cards or dice that are cards, such as this, that renders a random result. And so I'm very excited, especially that Matt K is using playing cards for Forbidden Lands. As you may or may not know, I am a card boy. I love the cards. The cards love me. And as I was going through this, I was thinking about a video that I had declared that I was going to make earlier in the month. And it was going to be a members-only video, and that was going to be how to improve usage of your Oracle. Now, I think, and I don't think the members will be too mad, because I have been spoiling the members with nice videos, especially the Pendragon campaign, as well as another one that I have planned that I think is going to be real nice, probably early December, to talk about a plan, hatching a scheme perhaps. But I hope they will not begrudge me, the members of this channel, sharing this information more widely, because I consider this to be a PSA within the SoloRPG community, especially to those of you who are just starting out and might feel a little bit intimidated. Essentially, what I want to do in this video is improve your usage of oracles to help you to understand how to better use the outputs from oracles, to apply them to your gameplay, and to get the most out of them so that you can more seamlessly solo play, right? Because the thing with solo play that we don't want is to get too bogged down. We want to keep moving, and we also want to avoid those moments, those little existential crises that we have where we suddenly go, what the hell am I doing? How do I do this? How do I solo play? Where am I? Who am I? Now, the usual setup, I'm working through, I finally finished writing and am now working on layout and illustration, etc. for my Mutineer Zero solo supplement. And I just pulled a table, an inspiration table. Now, I had made this inspiration table based on the Dragonbane Alone in Deepfall Breach inspiration table that I think is on like page 4 of it. Just D20, 3 columns, action attribute thing, but obviously because the Dragonbane one is more solo focused, this one I adapted it to be post-apocalyptic mutated wasteland. And essentially this requires a roll of 3d20. And each time you roll this d20, you are going to get a new piece of information. So we'll say here solids are the teams, and we'll just say, all right, 15. So search, 13, shattered, 19, group. Search, shattered, group. Okay, and so from that, depending on the context and where I was in the game, I'd probably either say that I'm going to look for a group that recently fell apart, or I am near some sort of group that is fracturing and I need to investigate them. Those are two similar ways to look at that input, and both of them are correct. And I think this sort of inspiration table is the best one, the best setup to just derive a little bit more information whenever you need it so that you can move on in play. Now, I think what I want to do is whittle this down even a little bit more. I want to whittle it down to talking broadly about the little transactions that your mind makes when you are using an oracle in solo play, and some heuristics that you can follow to better guide your usage of them, as well as overall just sort of guide your solo play. And then the second thing is that I want to share some ways of looking at a result, okay? And the rather than even looking at this 3-step result like the one I presented here, I just want to look at a single word, right? So say if you were using a table and the result was snow, and using snow in all the ways that you can. All right, so this is sort of a precursor video to my Forbidden Lands solo playthrough, which I think I am ready to record, well, maybe after this video, but we'll see. It's going to be probably a multi-part playthrough, but I'm not certain. And I will admit it, I have drank the forbidden Kool-Aid. I have the Forbidden Lando Calrissian, the Kool-Aid Rissian. All right, so let's talk about it. And the provisional title that I have for this section of the video is Oracular Spectacular, which I would like to add that I did add a K, so it's different than the title of the MGMT album, Oracular Spectacular. This is completely different. Spec is a bit of stuff, food stuff perhaps. Maybe that got stuck on a window. Totally different. But without further ado, let's talk Oracular Spectacular. And you know what? Since we're going to be talking this whole video, I might as well put a waffle warning up. Here we go. Okay, so Oracular Spectacular. So the first thing is, I think we need to talk it out. All right, that's like my first bullet point here in terms of overall strategy. When you are not only using an Oracle, but whenever you're solo playing, whatever your version of talk it out is, you need to engage in that. So some of you, maybe you have write it out, maybe you have type it out. You need to have some component of your thought process that is externalized, whether that's doodling, writing, or in my case, just talking. And very often, talking is in the form of babble. All right. And it sounds something like this. For instance, if I was just to open this up right here and I read this word companions and I said, okay, companion. Who is my companion? What is a companion? It's a funny word. Companion, companion, onion in a pan. You know what? Companion, good. Yeah. You want to talk like so at times out of box, like so strangely that if your loved ones are around you, they're concerned, right? You might want to sing rhythmically to yourself, companion, whatever you want to do. I want you to wash that idea through your head as if you're gargling it. Brain gargle. And as with every brain gargle, as with every gargle, you must spit it out. And talking is the form of that. I feel that when people sit in silent contemplation about something, there needs to be some sort of body activity that accompanies that in order to get it out. And one of I think the most discouraging moments of solo play is if you read something, you don't really know how to interpret it, and you just stand there in silence or sit there in silence and stare forward. Because many times that sort of behavior ends with you being like, I don't know, whatever, right? And we do not want to hit whatever. We do not want to get to that point of despondence that I hear about very often with people where they feel like, oh, what's the point? Why am I doing this? This is silly, etc. You're doing it because you wanted to do it, the same reason you do anything. So just keep doing it, talk it out. All right. So that's just very general. That's not genius level insight or anything like that. The second thing I want to say is stop being clever. I also want to say Ganzutai because I have to sneeze. 1 second. Oh, man. That was a really, really good sneeze. Whew. I almost blew everything off the desk here. Oh, thank you. Assuming you said God bless you or whatever. So stop being clever. All right. Being clever is not going to work here. Your brain is more clever than you, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's a little bit of a disclaimer I want to put up front here is a lot of these pieces of advice, when put together, are going to be paradoxical. They're going to be mutually exclusive. They're going to be hypocritical, whatever it might be. But it's like you have to keep a carousel of all these maxims in your head as you're playing, and you need to draw on them as is appropriate. But I want to say, stop trying to be clever. The desire to be clever is what makes your dialogue uninteresting, your characters limited and one note. It's also tremendously slowing down the momentum of the game. It's also sopping up your brain power. It's not worth it. Stop trying to make it more elaborate. Stop proving to yourself how clever and smart and insightful and skilled you are. Just start putting the ideas out that your brain has on a platter rather than digging through the pantry. Because if you keep doing this, this is one of the fastest roads to exhaustion, and it also doesn't work. Cleverness will happen. The connections are going to be made, and let them surprise and delight you. Don't try to get out ahead of them by crafting a masterful story, because your subconscious is already working on it. Your subconscious is already doing that weaving. And so all you're doing is you're slowing down the assembly line and doing like quality control on everything. And you're being that boss that nobody likes, that's micromanaging, all right? Let the loom of the subconscious do its thing. Stop being clever. And this flows from the stop being clever, which is you can make more recipes with flour than you can with baked Alaska. Now, if you don't know what baked Alaska is, I think that's actually worth bringing up a picture of here. There we go. That's a nice baked Alaska. So yeah, baked Alaska, it's this old-timey dessert. It basically, what you're seeing on the outside, it's not always like flambéed like this, but it's a hell of a time to make this. It's like a cake with a meringue, like a marshmallow meringue. And then it's got vanilla cake in the middle, ice cream layer. And essentially you make this if you want to really impress people. Part of it is that, like, you see that toastiness, that meringue on the outside, people will often like blowtorch it. Okay. There are very few recipes that have, something that says like, you will need 1 cup milk, half cup sugar, 1 baked Alaska, 2 carrots. You can't make anything out of that. It's all made. Okay. Now, on the other hand, flour, I'm not even going to venture how many things you can make from flour, right? And flour is the more elemental precursor ingredient. You need it to make the cake in baked Alaska, at least in the traditional baked Alaska. And if you are always making baked Alaska with the ideas, you're overcooking them. And it can be really interesting in that moment, right? The wow of bringing that out to the table, but there's not many other options that you have from there. So if you have the option between like circle or Dyson sphere, a circle, and that might be a little too, we can go up one, we can say sphere, globe, something like that. But if we go all the way to baked Alaska and the Dyson sphere, that's it. That's what it is, right? So follow the lead of your dumber ideas, your ideas that you're like, oh man, is that all I can come up with? Yes, for now. Just go with that, and we'll use that as an ingredient a little bit later, okay? And I'm going to give an example when we move to the second part of this, which is to actually talk about how to use inputs with more dexterously, okay? Buy high, sell low. I've been thinking about this, whether this means what I want it to mean. Then I was like, to hell with it, because saying to hell with it is an exact like exemplar of what I'm talking about here. Take on new inputs easily and get rid of them easily. Don't worry about discarding things, or don't worry about taking the first idea that comes along. The ideas or the fixations that we have often derail us. And whenever I think about this, and I don't know what exactly this is, but there's sort of some like axiom here, is that I think about this birthday party that I was planning for one of my friends. Well, I was like planning it with them, and uh, one of the things that they wanted to do was to have a pinata, and there wasn't a pinata at the store, and they were like, "Ah, crap, that would have been fun." But like we were adults, like we didn't need the pinata, for whatever reason, just wanted to, you're in that pinata mood, your pinata phase. And they were like, "Ah, damn, that sucks. Oh, well, too bad. Plenty of, not the whole point of it." And I just got it in my head that I was going to find that pinata. And so I dropped them off back at the place, and they're like, "All right, we got to like set up some chairs and do this stuff." And I said, "Well, hang on a minute. I got something I want to do really quick. I'm going to run out and do it." And I went to about 5 stores looking for a pinata, and I I finally found a pinata, and I remember it being like $68. Um, and I brought it back like a conquering hero. And my friend was just like, You abandoned me for 2.5 hours." And I was like, "Yeah, but I got the pinata." And it's like, okay, like, thanks. But like, I've been doing all this stuff that we were supposed to do together. Now, I guess you need a little bit of backstory on this. My friend, I was helping them throw a birthday party because it was something where I told them previously that I'd never had a surprise party in my life. So they like secretly, but not so secretly, threw a surprise party that I sort of threw. Anyways, I promised them if they did this for me, I would help them throw this party. The whole story is very complicated and stupid. The point is, I spent all day looking for that one great idea, and I abandoned all of these other little ideas along the way. So stop chasing the royal flush. You got to play some pairs. You got to play some 3 of a kinds. You got to do a little high card sometimes. All right. You're always right. That thought that you had, and then you quickly dismissed it when you said, "Okay, let's see. I walk into a cave and I see," and maybe you go to the table or something like that, and it says, "woodpecker." And you're like, "A woodpecker?" Like, say you're in like sci-fi, like you're in an abandoned space station, and you pull up woodpecker, and you're like, "Oh, that was not right. I have to do it again," because obviously that's not a good input. But that is the input. And in fact, the rejection of that input, I can almost guarantee you the next one is going to be more bland, because woodpecker plus abandoned space station is where something incredible happens. Okay. I'm reminded the story that, I don't know if this is true, but about that Russian cosmonaut that was like in space and started hearing that tapping, and then was almost like losing his mind, pulling up all the panels looking for it. And then the only way that he was able to maintain his sanity was by allowing this repeated tapping in this shuttle, trapped in this tiny shuttle in space, one of the first people in space, is to make it like a metronome for a song, like a symphony. And that's how he made it and kept his sanity. I don't know if that's true. I saw it in a really good movie called Another Earth. But the point of that is like that something like that could spring from woodpecker, right? But instead you rejected that, and then you took the next one, and the next one was slime, right? Okay, now we're back on track. Woodpecker was right. In fact, woodpecker was great. don't reject it, because it is those ones that are really off the wall that are going to yield some really interesting stuff. All right, so you're always right, and it's okay when you're wrong. When you make a decision, try to eliminate the fear that you are going to upset the building narrative. This is one of the reasons why I have an aversion to playing inside IPs, is because you have to play in a carcass that already has like a whole skeleton, and you have to be careful to sort of follow the rules, the osseous architecture of that skeleton. And because, you know, like Star Wars, well, that's a bad idea because they massacred my boy, but Lord of the Rings, you know, this is something that, if, as I've said, one of the reasons I like the One Ring was because it was during this interstitial period, and not directly during, you know, what's happening in the trilogy. I almost called it the Peter Jackson trilogy, as if Peter Jackson wrote it. And so, you know, but don't worry about that when you're building the story and you say, oh, what if I'm like setting something up here and then it turns out to not be possible or not be true, right? Like, what if I say that my character jumps up on a ledge, and then I later find out that my character, you know, has a bum foot or something like that? It's okay. You can rewind, reset, restitch everything together. It's actually one of the great joys of solo playing, is when you can say, oh, okay, so actually what actually happened there was, and then you rewrite that to conform to the correct sequence or the correct truths that are serve as the premises of that world. And you don't have to do it, but a lot of times I find that you'll probably see this when I solo play, do playthroughs, is like I'll suddenly get a new piece of information, and then it makes another previous idea that I had. I throw that one away and I go, oh, no. Actually, what caused this? And that's okay. You scribble it out, you erase it, you set it anew, because you got to remember, like, you're telling this story and it is supposed to be immersive, but you're also telling the story of it to yourself while you make it, right? You are the director, the actor, and the viewer. And so the viewer will understand if the director and the actor have to do some reshoots, because all of those people are the same person. It's okay when you're wrong. It's also okay when you don't get something right, rules-wise. I've been playing just creating characters on Pendragon using the Book of Sires has been super fun. And I made it so that my character ended in 493, I think. And the core book of 6th edition, this is actually one of the problems of it, I've discovered, is that it's set so that you start in 508. And I was like, oh, well, how do I do this here? You know, I'm like, I don't know, 13, 14 years off. And then I remembered, like, later that night, I'm like, oh, I could just use like the Uther supplement. And if you haven't been following, that's okay. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense what I just said. But the point is that I derived a lot of joy in realizing like what I did wrong or what I missed. And the other thing about that campaign is I'm getting a lot of good feedback in comments. And so sometimes I'm taking what I learned from the comments or from reading the core book more, and I'm retrofitting it or I'm changing it. And sometimes I'm just saying, you know what, that's okay. Like, yeah, I probably should have not been able to cast that spell twice in that combat, or I might not have been able to use that mutation at that point in the game or whatever, but it's okay because ultimately, it's none of it, no matter how much the min maxers want us to believe it, it's kind of a wash, right? There's so many little moments of subjectivity in tabletop gaming that it's okay if you accidentally placed your initiative first when you should have gone third. Okay. And yeah, I guess that I elided that point here, but it was time is a flat circle. Like, if you need to reverse and go back and edit a piece of footage from before, you can do that. And moreover, you can do that way more easily in solo play. And in fact, I had a group that I was GMing for a couple, it must have been a year ago now. And we had just started Coriolis, and we really, something that we did, I don't even remember what it was, but we really, really something went awry. Like, something we were doing was just not working. It didn't work rules wise. It didn't work for the story, everything. And it was kind of like a rookie mistake. And I was trying to, I had bit off more than I can chew as the GM. Like, I created too much of a conspiracy and there were all these people involved. And I reached this point at which I was like, I can sit here with, like the detectives, they have string on the wall connecting all the pictures and everything. I can sit here and try to fix this, or I can just kind of own up to it and say, hey, I sort of wrote myself into a corner. Can we just assume that this piece of the story didn't work? And I am very surprised to say, like, they did not take that well, which kind of made me upset a little bit, because I felt that not everybody, I should say, in fact, most people took it okay, but there was 2 conversations that I had with 2 of the people where they really didn't like that. And they really felt like we played these things out. We submitted to like the stakes that you were creating, and we, immersed ourselves in that world. And now you're kind of just like deleting it, which as a GM, that is like this weird button that gets pressed that it really is a difficult button, because it's the one that's like, no, I'm happy to be a GM. I love doing this. And I do. Like, I prefer to GM over play. But in my the base of my like my brainstem, hidden away, is this thing of like, I'm doing this very nice, generous thing for all of you, or I'm creating this world for you to play it. And so when there is that resistance of like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's fair, or that's not good. It activates that. And I want to be like, oh, you don't think that's fair? Well, I'm so sorry that you come every week and just sit there as I write and direct and film a movie in your head, that you don't want to do these reshoots. It's not right that I feel this way. That is a passive aggressive orientation. And I did work through that at that moment. But all of this to say, in solo play, you don't have to deal with any of that. None of it. From the GM standpoint, from the player standpoint, none of it. Okay. So next we have the last piece of this segment of the video, which is oracles don't play solo. You play solo. I am guilty of this myself at times. I'm definitely, maybe not with oracles or supplements, but accessories, merch. I feel like I have to have everything just right before I dive into a game or a universe, or that I'll say, wow, I really want to play a game of RuneQuest solo, but I don't have a good solo supplement for it. The truth is that the difference between like a um, a great solo supplement and a good one is very, very far. But the difference between no supplement and a good one is pretty short. And so using tools that you have, tools from other games, tools from definitely things like Mythic GME, or anything like Fate Mill, or anything else that can fill in all of the gaps. If you played enough solo games, you know what you need. You just have to make it. And the more games you play, the more competent you will be in playing without a specific supplement, and then eventually creating your own supplements for solo play so that you can share your well-earned tricks with others that bridge the gap from good to great. Okay, so now we are going to talk specifically about how to use Oracle outputs to the max. And I'm going to do this by presenting a single word, and then I'm going to see how many different ways we can derive meaning from that word. Okay, so the word that we're going to use in and of itself is a lesson, because while I was constructing this list and deciding how to go about it, I literally said, what is the first word that came to my mind? And the first word was Kyiv, or Kiev, as in the capital of Ukraine. And I immediately was like, nah, I really shouldn't use this. There's people have feelings about Ukraine, and it's not a great situation for anybody, and I don't want to bring that up, and I don't want. And then I was like, wow, I'm doing that thing. I'm doing that exact thing that I'm talking about, which is creating reasons as to why this is not the right word. It's a word, right? It's made of letters. There's no political statements on here. There's not any proclamations about, the war in Ukraine or anything like that. There's nothing. It's a word. It's a name of a city like Paris or Berlin or Chicago or San Francisco or Austin or Portland, whatever it is. It's a city, or that's the first thing that I thought of. And so, fine. This is the word. Okay. Say this was the word that came up while playing Mothership, and we say, no, this can't be the right word. I'm playing Death in Space. Kyiv doesn't exist there. It's in the far future. I'm playing a Warhammer game. I can't use that. Right? That was on old Earth. We're 40. No, this is the word you got. And if you get in the habit of saying yes to the ideas that you have, you are more easily able to interrupt that normal debilitating, denigrating, deprecating moment that happens right between the production of the output from the Oracle and you using it, because there's a lot here. I mean, think about everything I just said about this. And yet my first thought was, this is probably not a good word. Think about everything that came up in the space between, oh, this is the word. No, that's not right. And then I go, oh, well, it's Kiev or Kyiv. And I shouldn't say this because politics, war, mispronunciation, proclamation, all of these things that I can use as inputs. And I rejected it because I said, no, it's not the right word. But it was just the word that came up. It was just the word that came up. And in fact, I won't even say the actual reason that I thought of this word. I won't even say the actual reason that I thought of this word until further along, because it actually had nothing to do with the port city on the Dnipro River. Okay? So there are a couple different ways that you can use an input. And the first way is literal. You could say, this is a city. This is Kyiv. Right? Or it's any city. It's any Soviet, ex-Soviet, Eastern Slavic state. Right? Or you can even be over literal. You can literally look up Kyiv in a dictionary. And you could say, oh, okay, it was really badly destroyed after the Second World War, but then they started reconstructing it, and it's like the most important. They used to call it the mother of Russian cities, and it's a big railroad junction, and it's an ancient city. All this stuff, you could be over literal with it. You could sit there and you can insert the entirety of Kyiv into your storyline, and it really doesn't matter what it is. You can everything I just said, you can insert that into the One Ring, and then at the very end of it, just rename it like Elswin with 7 Y's and 33 L's or whatever the city names are in that. You could do that. Oh, there's no railroads? Okay, well, whatever. Carriage lines. It doesn't matter. You can use exactly Kyiv. All right? The other thing you could do is lateral literal. Lateral literal means that you think of this, and maybe this isn't the right choice, but if you just flip it to the side, you can see a more clear path. Okay, so maybe I see Kyiv and I go, well, Kyiv, that doesn't, what I actually thought of when I saw Kyiv for whatever reason is I thought of the Bolshevik Revolution. I don't even know if that makes sense. I don't even know if that happened in Kyiv. I thought of Bolshevik. I thought of revolution, right? You just go kind of laterally. This reminds me of this thing, which reminds me of this thing. Because you don't have to, you don't have to honor Kyiv as what it is, because it's just a word. You have to honor your thought about the word. Okay? The next thing you could do, which I think is way underused, is break it apart. Really see it as a word, because it really is a word. I mean, first of all, people from Kyiv, they don't spell it like I have it here. If they use, the whatever Cyrillic alphabet, I don't even know how they're spelling it, but if not, Kyiv, right? And so I can look at that as the individual letters of it, okay? I can look at it backwards. I can look at it and say, backwards, that looks like view. I can look at the shape of the letters and how I wrote it, okay? I can look at that and say, that's a T leaning on an I. I can use this as an acronym, and it means kicking in every vegetable. Right? Or an initialism, which I think is like cultural investigatio entrepreneuro virtuous. I don't know how to I'm doing like Russian Latin, but I can, this is my toy. This is a word. It's just a group of letters, so I can play with it, and I'm not doing anything. It's like it's just letters, right? So I can even show you, like, in a way, ooh, terrible sound. This could have been that. It's all the same letters, just in a different order. Doesn't mean anything, like anything that a person might have supposed it came up, it meant. It just meant a group of letters. Okay, accented, affected. As I was sitting here looking at this and I was talking it out, I started going, Kiev, Kiev, Kiev. Oh, a door opening. Kiev. A grandmother calling her grandson Kevin. Kiev, can you get the door? Kiev, Kiev, key. Can you get a key to the door? Affected. Kev? That changes it, right? If I say, where is this person? Kiev. Kiev. Kiev? Kiev. 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 Those are all ways of saying Kiev. They all mean different things. Play with it. Vibes and whiffs. Okay, this one, I admit, it's a little bit difficult to verbalize, simply because the point of it is that it lies beyond the valley of verbalization, so to speak. Okay, it's like sometimes words feel like other words. Like we hear the word, but then it has a different meaning. It has a meaning that comes to mind. It has a meaning that lurks in the back behind the word. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. When somebody says the word penny, you might think of a coin, or you might think of loafers, right? I might think of my dog that I had when I was young, little Penny, right? With her little golden coat and her multiple eye surgeries. But the whiff, the vibe that I get from the word penny is of a candy store. Well, actually, it wasn't a candy store. It was a drugstore that was on the corner of where I lived growing up, right by the bus stop. And there was an old dude there who sold penny candy. And I've never been able to find penny candy again. And so if you just say the word penny at any time and I hear it the right way, I immediately see and hear and smell and taste that drugstore. And I see the little bronze gate in front of it, and I see the cream bricks, and I see the back door to it, and I occasionally see the delivery there, and I see all of this cheap candy, but it was so great. You know, those like butterscotches that were wrapped in like the golden cellophane, and there was the little wax soda bottles that you could open up, and there was candy inside. And then I don't even know if anyone remembers these. There was like this roll of like little candy dots that it was almost like a toilet paper roll, and you would pull it and there were just candy dots stuck on the paper. I think of that, and I think that I'm not the only one who has thoughts like that. Let's get even more weird, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about these kind of things. When somebody says stinker, I think of pigtails. And I think of a popsicle stick. I'm not kidding. A popsicle stick with pigtails running down a beach. And I have no idea where this thought came from. I have no idea. It has been there my whole life. How about the name Brian? When I hear Brian, the name Brian, I think of that paper that covers a hanger when you get it from the dry cleaner. That's a Brian in my mind. I have no idea why. No clue. Couldn't tell you. But I know that's what I think. Why should I not honor those things? Especially if I'm playing solo. What a fascinating, weird left turn. And then you say, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with penny candy and pigtails and popsicle sticks and running down a beach and dry cleaning? I don't know, man. I'm not playing the game you're playing. But all I know is that if the first question you ask is, what am I supposed to do with that? You're wasting time, because the question should be, what am I going to do with that? Okay. A popsicle with pigtails running down a beach, for whatever reason, if I stick a microphone in front of that popsicle, it's saying to me, neener, neener, neener. You know, putting its thumbs in its ears and its hands up. I don't know why. It's a brat. Okay. I think of paper around a hanger. I think of a wire hanger. I think of a coat that is more expensive. Maybe needs to be dry cleaned. Think of dry cleaning, chemicals, heat. I think of so many things, and yet the thing that so often is, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Man, what are you not supposed to do with that? Go onto a beach, go into a dry cleaner, put candy in your mouth, see what it tastes like. Tastes like watermelon? Where does that come from? The fruit, where is it grown? Who cuts it? You ever play Fruit Ninja? Remember that game? It's for the early iPhone. What does the iPhone 3 look like? What did the iPhone 6 look like? What does the iPhone 200 look like? 200, was that a prequel to 300? What about that? Was there another Sparta Jr.? Junior Seau, the linebacker. He died. How? He had got concussions, too many of them. Concussive explosives, explosive grenades, explosive diarrhea. When you're sliding into first and you feel something burst, diarrhea. Baseball. Basketball. Do you see what I'm saying here? Why am I sitting here going, what am I supposed to do with that? Do it. Take a smell. Feel the vibe. Take a ride. And you know what? If you can't do anything with it right now, and you probably see me do this when I do playthroughs, I go, all right, let's hang on to that. Right? The word that I tried to replace this one with, and before I decided, like, no, I'm not doing it, was crush. And say I got crush, and say I have some like intrusive thought. And I will say an intrusive thought is an interesting case. We'll talk about that next. But sometimes intrusive thoughts can block thoughts, right? And so say for whatever reason, I see crush and I go, let's hang on to that. Go ahead and hang on to it. If you have it written somewhere, literally put it out here, put a pin in it in your head, whatever, and then see what's going to happen with that. I tend to do this with more definitive things. Okay. So I'll give you an example. If I am playing a medieval fantasy game and I storm a castle and then we win and we plunder, and inside I enter a room and what do I find? And I roll the dice and it comes up as coat. And I go, coat of arms, leather armor. What could that be? Coating, something's coated. And I say, you know what? Let's poke around this room a little bit more and then see it come together. And I'll put it to the side, and then I find something else and I go, yes, this is what that meant. That's putting it in your deposit box. But don't put too much in your deposit box, and don't leave anything in there for too long. And don't over rely on the deposit box. Again, I think it works really well when you have intrusive thoughts that are blocking a thought, which I would say that's a special case. That's the last one. We're going to talk about that next. But it's also good when it's sort of something that is pretty well on the money, but you just need like a little bit more, right? So if I did that and it said Squire, right? Squire. And I'm like, okay, a squire. There's lots of squires around. And I'll say, let me hang on to that. Let me put that in the deposit box. And then later I find out it's, hiding is the next one. And I go, there's a squire to the knight that lived here. And he's hiding in the room and he's going to pop out at me and try to get the drop on me and stab me. So I'm going to start combat. He's way weaker than me, but he does have sabotage. So he has initiative and gets the first attack, right? It was specific. It worked, but I needed a little more. I deposited it. And then the last thing, an intrusive and overpowering, I call it an irresistible brain blast. This does happen every once in a while. The first thing to do, okay, so what this is when you have a thought and it's a little demon of a thought. And I know that some of you are going to think that I am like saying this as an expression or that I'm like using it as a metaphor, but I literally, and this is probably pretty important to know and understand me. I do not believe that we make thoughts. I believe thoughts happen to us. I truly, truly believe that. And that our goal is not to like spelunk around our minds and look for thoughts, but it's to like humble and open ourselves up and amplify whatever it is that we're going to, our creative faculties, video on this coming up, so that we can be receptive to those thoughts and that we can share those thoughts. And so I have found every time in my life that when I'm trying to be creative, I suck. And when I'm just like opening myself up to whatever inspiration I can find, the creativity beams out of me, right? And sometimes with all of this beautiful spiritual inspiration, you get yourself a little devil, a little billiken, right? It's not a bad devil. It's not evil. It's just kind of naughty, mischievous, right? And this mischievous devil is the kind of devil that makes you repeat words that annoy your spouse. Like sometimes I'll walk around the house and I'll say to BB, I'll be like, can I have a Kleenex? She'll be like, why are you saying this? I'm like, I need a Kleenex to blow my nose. And she's like, a Kleenex? I'm like, no, a Kleenex. A Kleenex. And I have no reason of saying that. And it's completely annoying. It's stupid. I even start to hate it after it comes to my mouth. It's like a little demon that got into my brain. And it's right. And so when you got yourself a little demon, right, and you are at a pivotal scene in some sort of, maybe your session or whatever, and you're like, okay, my character has fought through the 9 trials, and now they're going to be allowed to open the book that tells them their destiny, right? And they have waited, 30 years to do this. And this they want it so bad to be the ability to avenge their father because he was killed in battle on the open fields via battle axe. And this moment, you open it and you look for what it is, and no matter what the input is, your brain just goes, how about a backflip on a Sea-Doo jet ski? You know what I'm talking about? You ever play that game Wave Race for N64? Where you're on like a jet ski. And suddenly that thought just comes through your head. And in fact, you start to become a genius, right? in terms of relating words back to Sea-Doo jet skis. Like you'll throw fire down, and it'll be like the afterburner turbine of a Sea-Doo jet ski, right? And then you're going to see like tearing pain. You're like tearing, ripping and tearing, just like I tear through the riptides on a Sea-Doo jet ski. And the demon has to get out. You have some choices. Number one, you can take a break and let the demon come out and just start saying Sea-Doo jet ski to BB over and over again until she wants to, do a backflip off my head and kick me in the face. You can overpower it. You could say, nope, not doing it. You can try to controvex it and say, okay, well, not a Sea-Doo, but let's just say there's some sort of craft that's a sea craft, the open water. Okay, the destiny tells me that I need to sail east, and I need to do whatever I see, like a Sea-Doo or something, right? And that is, I would say, achievement unlocked when you're able to do that. You can put it in the deposit box, but it might keep clinking around in there. But what I like to do is I like to honor that little summa B, and I like to put it not in a safe deposit box, but in the mind prison. And when I went to, when I was little, when I would fall asleep, I would try to do this mental exercise. I'm talking, I was like 6 or 7. I would imagine a coin. And let's just say actually this. I would imagine in my head a coin. Let's just say, well, actually I have a coin. And I would say, okay, I'm placing this coin in a treasure chest. It was in a treasure chest in my mind. And then I would close the treasure chest. And then I would say, I'm going to fall asleep, and I'm not going to let the treasure chest open. And I would see the treasure chest closed. And then it would count 1, 2, 3, and then it would open, and the coin would come like flying out. And so I'd put it in again, and then I'd close it, and I'd put a chain around it. And then I'd say 1, 2, 3. I'd get up to 6. The chains would bust off. I even used to make myself feel bad because I was a little Catholic, and I would say, okay, this time I have wrapped the treasure chest in God's love. And so if the coin gets out, that means that I don't believe in the eternal power of God's love. You better bet that by the time I got to 2, that God's love was just, and the coin was flying out of there, right? But I noticed something, is that always, even when I was chastising myself, every time the coin busted out of that box, something else came with it. Something that was buried really deep in me that was freaking genius. Whether it was a joke or a story or an idea or an impression. And so, take that little demon. You could even take a die or whatever, put it in a box, put it aside, see how long it stays in there in your mind. And when it bursts out, well, that part of the video, that part of instructions, you will have to just try it for yourself. That was a pretty awesome ending. Don't you think so? Try it for yourself. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, pretty cool. You know what I mean?